the two teams to court, Great Britain and Japan. It's time to introduce the players, starting with Great Britain. Number 2, Matt Lofton. 3, Josh Murphy. 4, David Scott. 5, Taylor Manini. 7, Dan Roper. It's Ray Dale, assistant coach Alex Lulling, and staff is Josie Houston. And now, introducing Japan. Number 1, Yuto Sano. 2, Yoshi Nobusawa. 4, Yuji Takuchi. 7, Kazuya Kaneko. 8, Koji Majiki. 9, Yuta Kawashima. The head coach is Ryuka Kudo. Assistant coach Ami Tsudo. And staff Ryoga Ayashima. Your 2 referees are Fariba Mohammadi and Andrea Kuba Donkaite. Thank you. Enjoy the game. 5 minutes, teams. 5 minutes.
Welcome along. It is game 59 and the 7th one of the day here in the CBS Arena in Coventry in Hall 1 and the court where it is, as it is Great Britain and Japan take 2 as they look to try and get a victory from today. Both losers earlier on. As you will see, Finland were 9-3 winners over Great Britain. Japan 10-3 losers to Lithuania, so Japan conceding just one more goal than Great Britain in their respective fixtures earlier on today. The women's saw Great Britain lose 2-0 to China, USA 1, Canada 6, Ukraine 0, Germany 4. So we round off the action with Great Britain against Japan. It was due to be at 6:15, remember, Denmark against Canada in the women's division, but of course Denmark withdrawing means that we have just 7 games on this court for you to keep your eyes over and listen to. Well, we are just under 5 minutes away from getting started, so let's reveal the squad list then. For Great Britain, number 2 is Matt Loftus, number 3 is Josh Murphy, David Scott, number 4, Caleb Nanavi, number 5, and then it's the ropers of Dan, number 7 and 8 for Joe. Faye Dale is the head coach, Alex Bunny and Josie Hewson are her support staff. And for Japan, well, of course, if you've been watching all day, you would have maybe have heard their game against Lithuania. Some of the players you will maybe know. They have Yuto Sano as number 1. The rest of the squad is Yoshu Nobusawa, Yuji Tagauchi is number 4, Kazuya Kaneko, Koji Miyajiki is number 8, and number 9 is Yuta Kawashima completing the list. Rakia Kudo is the head coach, Ai Todo is the assistant, and the staff member is Ryoga Hayashi. Well, as I mentioned, we are just a few minutes away from starting here. Fariba Mohammadi and Andrea Kumar are your officials, as we are just under 3 minutes away from the final game of the day. Great Britain men and Japan men on this court again for the second time today, both looking to avenge their losses earlier on today.
This is your guide to Goalball. The aim of Goalball is to throw a 1.25 kilogram ball into your opponent's goal and to prevent your opponent from doing the same. At the end of the match, the team with the most goals wins. It's a simple premise, but there's so much that adds layers of intrigue. At official competitions like the Paralympic Games, Goalball can be played by athletes who are blind or partially sighted. All players must wear eye shades to even the competition. Players have some audio and tactile cues to help them locate the ball and their surroundings. The lines on the court are slightly raised, so players can feel where they are on the court. Added to that, the 1.25 kilogram ball has bells within it to help players locate its position. That's right, by the way, 1.25 kilograms. Goalball is played on a court of 18 by 9 metres, and the goals themselves are the full 9 metre width of the court. In teams of 3, players take turns to attack and defend depending on possession of the ball. It requires great toughness and durability as the game is played on a hard court with limited protection, and the only way to stop the ball going in is to block it, sometimes by hurling yourself across the hard court to make spectacular saves. In attack, different throwing techniques are used to generate power and accuracy and to try and dupe the opponent. The most common is the discus throw, where players spin and release akin to a discus thrower. A popular move, coined the Brazilian special, involves powering the ball backwards through your own legs. Players aren't unlimited in their options though. Among the rules is a requirement for the ball to touch the floor in both your own and your opponent's half, much like a ping pong serve, to be a legal throw. At the Paralympics, throws have been measured at over 60 kilometers an hour, as the best players in the world look to fire their way to glory. The USA are the most successful country at the Paralympics, with both their men's and women's teams winning a combined 13 medals over the years. Their women's team have also got the most World Championships podiums. In the men's, the USA are also the most decorated with 5 Paralympic medals, closely followed by Lithuania with 4. Goalball is played all around the world at the highest level at world and regional championships in Europe, Africa, the Americas and Asia and Oceania, as well as lots of smaller competitions. So what are you waiting for? Check Goalball out now.
Just about to start this game as we have Great Britain going from left to right, Japan going from right to left. Great Britain in their blue shirts with the red and white on the top of it, and of course Japan are in black, red at the top of it, red at the bottom of it. It's Fariba Mohammadi just sanitises her hands before blowing a whistle to get this final game of the day underway. The final word from Fariba Mohammadi before we start. Just basically going over some basic rules and who will start us off. It will be Great Britain who will do just that. Dan Roper is going to be the first player to have the shot of the game with power, and it's kept out well by Yuta Kawashima. Yuto Sano going for it, near corner, away to Dan Roper's right, but it's gone out. So now comes in from the near side all the way into the centre. Denied though, and denied well. We'll reveal the 3 players on the pitch for each very shortly. Dan Roper will have an attempt now for GB, looking to try and score, but it was low. Didn't really get the height he was looking on it. Certainly got the power though. Sano now has a go. Kept out well by GB as David Scott will go for it. That's a good attempt. Sort of rushed off the court, didn't it, and landed in the Japan area. Seems to get a lot behind his shots, doesn't he, does David Scott? So we're officially a minute plus in. Kaneko going for it, kept out though by Dan Roper. Kaneko, but encouragement. GB players for the home crowd. Coventry is where we are, so the 3 players on the pitch for GB. David Scott is the far side. The middle of the 3 is Joe Roper, the number 8. Right of him is Joe Roper. And for Japan, they have the centre of Yuta Kawashima. On the left is Kazuya Kaneko, and on the right is Yuto Sano. Play is stopped on 10 minutes 24 seconds. Does appear as though there might have just been a bit too much noise coming from the crowd there. Of course, they have to be quiet at all times, remember, when the action is unfolding. They can have a little cheer if it's off the court and there's a stoppage in play. So even that applies that rule to the coaching staff, who cannot say anything. David Scott's effort is well denied by Kazuya Kaneko. We'll have an attempt with a little discus spinning shot. So that's the right time for GB fans to make some noise. It's 10 seconds they get each to have an attempt. It's an effort from Dan Roper has just gone wide of the Japan goal. Kazuya Kaneko's side went away to his left as he made the dive. Of course, there are people on the officials table who do keep a close eye on if they've gone over the time or not. That's something, of course, that not many do fall foul of, to be fair, in goalball, but of course, if they do, they will concede a penalty, and they have to sometimes, if they know they're not going to pass it to the player, or they're not going to get a shot away on their own team, then they will just throw it off the court. 9 minutes 27 played, left to play. Great Britain men nil, Japan men nil. 12-minute halves. From Sano. Cleared out by Joe Roper. So the whistle blows, the countdown clock restarts again. David Scott with a lovely turn. And spinning throw, it's low. Of course, around 60 kilometres per hour they can travel them balls, so you can get a lot of power on it. A lot of height shown there by Kazuya Kaneko, who throwers taking a bounce in the England landing area, and it was well kept out. Of course, when I talk about the landing area, think of it like a ping pong serve where, of course, or table tennis, whatever you prefer to call it, where, of course, they have the serve that has to go in the certain area on the sort of opposite side. If you liken it to a table tennis table, but of course here, it's just throwing it straight from your end to the other end. If it doesn't bounce in the opposition first sort of rectangle from the square, then it will lead to an opposition penalty. Many teams and players have been caught up by that. It will go to a penalty, leave one player on the pitch to defend it, and the person who is left to defend it will be the person, of course, who gave away the penalty and had the illegal throw. As David Scott keeps out Kazuya Kaneko. Fahideo with her arms behind her back as she watches on the England head coach. Scott going low. Sano diving and keeping it out. Yuta Sano to that goal going in. So you just see there, Joe Roper, or the people that can see, or the ones who weren't able to, for the audio purposes there, Joe Roper just passing the ball to Dan Roper to throw a shot towards the goal. Of course, the centre doesn't usually do that. He does usually pass it to his wide players to have an attempt at goal. And obviously, Kazuya Kaneko have an attempt. Straight through, though, to Joe Roper. There's a lot to like so far about the Great Britain performance. As Scott sees his effort go past the diving Kawashima, but turning into it is Kaneko to keep it out. And off the court it goes. It will be a Great Britain ball. It's not like in football where it goes off the last player last. It will be the other side who will get the ball back or the throw if it goes off the court here. If you keep it out defensively, you get it back for the next attack. As we are seeing now Japan take the lead. It was Kaneko with the throw. The discus style type throw. Bounced in the landing area. Joe Roper was trying to stop it, but it's just got off the face of David Scott and gone into the middle of the goal. They just didn't react quick enough. After it was the original deflection off of David Scott in Japan. They've scored first here, just to try and deflate the atmosphere of the home GB crowd. David Scott with an effort. Just goes past the post. Had that been a little bit more inside, that's probably 1-1. That effort as Sano was diving. but it dived past him and wide. As it might be 2-0, here it is. Well, how unfortunate. Dan Roper, Sano came in the middle. It came off his front, off his stomach, and then it went behind him. He's underneath it, and then it just goes off his side. So they're a little bit fortunate there, Japan. There's now GB trail by 2-0. There's of course the timeout's called. 7 minutes 13 remaining. Of course, the staff off the pitch in red polos come on and wipe the court. I'll explain what that is in a minute. But here's the goals again for the partially sighted viewers. And the last one from Sano goes off Dan Roper first. Then it goes off him again, off his front the first time, the second time off his left side and in. Of course, when they get that time out, of course, because the players are sliding to try and stop goals going in defensively, they do leave a bit of a trail, sort of just sweat or moisture from their sort of clothes. It goes onto the surface. It's got to be smooth on that hard surface, so it makes it easy for the mobility of the players to stop shots. So hence why they do come on and with a long handle brush, just give it a bit of a scrub over and a clear. As we're just under 7 minutes of the first half remaining here in Coventry's CBS Arena. Great Britain trail 2-0 to Japan. By the way, on the other court is Australia against Iran. Second time around. So, Great Britain ball. Back on the ref's whistle, so we will get started again. Attempting to try and score is Dan Roper, but it's too straight and easy for Yuto Sano. So now the 10 seconds are on. Running across with his hand on the frame of the goal is Kazuya Kaneko. Going over to the far side to try and strike. It's an effort which took a bounce. Not once, but twice before getting towards a Great Britain player. As the shot comes in, it's 3-0 Japan. Yuto Sano again. David Scott had an attempt at him. Sano kept it out, and then he gets up quickly, and I think he just completely catches the Great Britain defence sleeping and napping. As Sano gets his second, his country's third. It's Great Britain 0, Japan 3. Of course, they were well beat yesterday by Lithuania. Sorry to remind you, Great Britain fans. Suffered a loss earlier to Finland, losing 9-3. Now they're 3 down with 6 minutes to go this first half, and a whole 12 minutes second half to come as well. But they have come back from this deficit. Before their opening game, they lost 3-0 to, they were 3-0 down to Egypt, would go on to win. They have lost since then to Germany, to Finland, and Lithuania as well. Not all in that order. And they are training here to Japan in what is their 5th game of their home tournament. So it will be an attempt for Japan, which has seen Kaneko go over to that far side from the near side. So that's a tactic Japan are adopting. Very much Kaneko just sort of roaming round and trying to shoot from all angles. Usually some players just stay in one place, don't they? But not Kazuya Kaneko. He's going all over the place. Sano does tend to only stay really either in the middle or over on the far side. Now David Scott will have an attempt here for GB. Kept out there by Yuto Sano, just making sure that he wasn't going to get fooled by going down early. The attempt from Kaneko, which went from the near side of the court to the far side in the Great Britain. That is one that David Scott keeps out. Of course, when it comes to the eye shades, if you've not watched this before, you've been keeping tabs on it throughout the day, as I've mentioned, they are not allowed, the players, to touch them themselves or take them off unless they get officials' permission, as the ball is not dropped or bounced in the opposition landing zone. So it's going to be a Japan penalty. Player who gave it away. Dan Roper's got to stay on and defend this for GB, as Yuto Sano's going to take this. It's going to be 1v1. Dan Raper keeps it up. It's a cheer. Doesn't really want to celebrate too much given the scoreline. That's not been made worse. That's not inflicted upon Great Britain, that extra goal. So it still is 3-0 to Japan. As David Scott is going to go off and be the first sub for GB. As Caleb Nanavi is going to go on. Of course, they are required to at least make one sub in the first half. And that is what's happened here as GB have brought on Caleb Nanavi for David Scott. And Roper with the effort. And Kazuya Kaneko spread in and worried just a little bit perhaps, but wide of his post that he's covering. It's been an effort, it bounces. Difficult one for Nanavi, but negotiated it well enough. As he has having his eyes shades checked by Fariba Mohammedi, one of the two officials. Andrea Kumar is the other official on the near side. Fariba Mohammedi on the far side. Kawashima is there to make a stop. Japan centre, the number 9. They've not made a change yet in this first half either. Unlike, Great Britain, who have. They brought on Nanavi for David Scott. 4 minutes 17 seconds left. Timeout called. Great Britain 0, Japan 3. What is the final game of the day? GB played earlier on the men. They started off the action across the entire day on this court. They lost 9-3 to Finland. Great Britain women followed up with a 2-0 loss to China. And of course GB men at the moment losing 3-0 to Japan, so it's going to be 2 defeats on this court for them as it stands. Japan will lose earlier to Lithuania. They're making up for that with a 3-0 lead as it stands against Great Britain. South Korea 14-5 winners over Egypt in the men's. And the 2 other women's games, USA 1, Canada 6, Ukraine 0, Germany 4. Right now, Australia against Iran is on the other court. But we're focusing on GB. It's a home field here. They're not quite giving the home crowd what they want, which is no doubt a win. And a lead on the scoreboard because they are losing 3-0 as it stands. It's Dan Raper's attempt. Cannons off the chest of Yuto Sano, who just sort of let it hit his chest, really. In a nice starting position. Is now he goes over to the side where Kaneko is, so it may look like that now Kaneko and Sano are just going to swap round when they are taking shots. As Kaneko denies Nanavi. Kaneko now in the middle. He is moving round again. It's an effort which is reacted brilliantly by Joe Roper. And he'll knock it now to Dan Roper. Can Great Britain get one back? No, they cannot. Planting his elbow down to just sort of move his front forward was Kazuya Kaneko. Almost looked like a fish out of water there, trying to stop that as nearly pull one back for Great Britain there. As the court can get a bit of a wipe. A bit of a clean. Only in England's court specifically. They're going from left to right, of course, in this. First period. Back underway we go. Kazuya Kaneko will go for it. It's a bounce one. It's a high one. Does go low as it gets closer to Nanavi, who deals with it. Coming infield from the far side. Right arm throw along the floor. Bounces but goes wide. Of course, the goals are small in height, but they cover the entire width of the court. So that is why a lot of players go with low effort. Only high into the net when it's mainly deflections. in fairness. Now Kazuya Kaneko is going to line one up here for Japan. Nanavi, though, holding on to it. Tightly clutched as well by the Great Britain substitute. As we are into the final 2 and a bit minutes of this first half. And Great Britain are on the board. Small cheers, but cheers nonetheless. Dan Roper's got it. First error that Japan have made of this first half. Great effort by Roper. His feet might have been off the court, but of course the ball wasn't, and it went underneath Yuta Kawashima and in, and Great Britain are on the board. So that's something to build upon, at least. If they were to get one, they wouldn't mind going at the break 1 goal down, instead of the 2 that they currently find themselves down at the moment. So it's GB 1, Japan 3. Final men's game of the day and final one on this court. We were due to have 8, but it's only 7 because it's come to our attention earlier on in the day that Denmark have withdrawn in the women's tournament. So their game against Canada postponed for today. And for the rest of the tournament, they will play no further part. The effort from the GB goal scorer Dan Roper was central, but denied by Yuta Kawashima. So it does look like GB now defensively are a lot better than what they were to start this affair. There's Kaneko, will now have a go. Seems as though he will score. Nanavi just didn't react quick enough. Just goes through him. There's it's Great Britain 1, Japan 4 on the scoreboard. That was a brilliant effort by Kaneko. It had the bounce, it had the pace. And in it goes as it is. 4-1 now to Japan. So we will be back underway. 90 seconds plus remain. Great Britain 1, Japan 4. Nanavi going for it. Keeping it tight and keeping it together with his feet was Yuta Kawashima, the centre for Japan. There's now Sano's going to have a go. Kaneko gone back to the near side at the moment, so Sano's going to have an attempt here from where he's been pretty much on this court. Of course, the tactile tape in red in each half is designed to help the players and where they are sort of with their positions in terms of where they defend and where they can shoot and go in from. It's only that sort of split rectangle, the second one closer to the goal line, where that is in effect. Of course, you can be in front of it, you can be behind it, and it just helps the players. You might see them sometimes use their hands to just sort of help where they are, whether they're going up it, so it means they're going closer to the line, or if they're going back to it, if they're going to go back. They can move away to the right or the left of it, or in front or behind it as well. So, Great Britain 1, Japan 4. Well by Dan Roper with his feet on the near side. The only player for GB at the moment who's found a way into the Japan goal. Neko now with the attempt. Japan. Well by Joe Roper for GB. Final 5 seconds. Nanavi will make the stop. And then we'll readjust to make sure it doesn't go in. Well, it's not so Great Britain at the moment. They trail 4-1 to Japan. 2 for Kazuya Kaneko and Yuto Sano. Dan Roper may have put GB on the scoreboard, but they have got a lot of work to do. Improvement needed as they're set for 2 defeats in just a single day on court here at the CBS Arena in Coventry. Half-time, GB trail 4-1 to Japan.
IBSA, International Blind Sports Federation, presents, with the support of the International Paralympic Committee, IBSA Anti-Doping App, the first application of its kind in the Paralympic movement, specifically designed for blind and visually impaired people. Athletes, coaches, medical staff, managers, and the public in general now have a powerful tool to stay focused on the principles of clean sport. Scrolling down the main menu, you can find all the important themes you need to know to play fair and be alert to testing procedures and necessary adaptations for athletes with visual impairments. IBSA gives top priority to anti-doping control, being the only international federation with 3 sports in the Paralympic family: goalball, football, and judo. IBSA Anti-Doping App has external links, namely to WADA, where our sport agents can always find the most updated information, especially the list of prohibited substances and methods. Glory in sport can only be achieved by the athlete's awareness of their rights and responsibilities. You can find them on the IBSA Anti-Doping App. IBSA is continuously promoting anti-doping education to all its affiliate athletes and sport agents, not only about the consequences of the use of doping and the risk of using supplements. IBSA believes that education is the major tool to fight doping in sport. Informed athletes can make better decisions. Download the app now at the usual operating system stores.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have seen history being made today.
Such a great team at these championships.
IBSA. Beyond sight. Feel the sport.
Welcome back. Second half will be shortly starting. Great Britain right to left, Japan left to right. Japan predominantly black shirts, red on the top, red on the bottom. GB in blue, white and red on the top. As before we start, Fariba Mohammadi will just have a brief explanation as to what she wants and who's going to start us off. So there is a change, as mentioned by Fariba Mohammadi. Koji Miyajiki on in place of Kazuya Kaneko. A couple of blows on the whistle to let the players know that we can get started again. And Japan nearly were 5-1 up. Had it not been for Nanavi shuffling back. Now they've got to just throw that off the court, and they have. And it's a bit of an untidy start by Great Britain. Nanavi made the block on the goal line. Dan Roper was going to shoot. He just sort of got himself a bit dizzy, hit the ball against himself, and only had a few seconds to try to shoot. He just threw it off the court because he knew he didn't have any time to fire it towards the Japanese goal. Hence why he threw it off the court to avoid the cost of a penalty against his side. There's Great Britain like this. They have in the centre Joe Roper, number 8. Dan Roper to his right, then number 7. Caleb Nanavi to the left of Joe Roper, who is the number 5 for Great Britain and Japan. 9 Yuta Kawashima, the centre. They have Yuto Sano to the right of him, and to the left on the far side is Koji Miyajiki for Japan. 42 seconds gone of this second period. Japan 4, Great Britain 1. That was a pretty hefty bounce of the ball, but kept up by Japan. And then number 9, Yuta Kawashima. So it will be Japan who will have this latest attempt. Clock stopped on 11 minutes 2 seconds, which means, of course, how much of the game is left. It will be a Japan penalty because the ball didn't bounce in the Japan half and in their landing area. Miyajiki scores the first goal of the second half. Along the floor. Perfect throw. Accuracy. Equally strong. As Japan now have a 5-1 lead. Throw by Sano, kept up by Nanavi. Roper turning forward. Generated so much power behind that. I don't think he could have thrown that any harder if he'd had that attempt again. There's of course the substitute, Koji Miyajiki, with that full beach sort of sand blonde hair, is on for Japan and is already writing himself on the score sheet and imprinting his name on this game, as the effort from Dan Roper is low and hits the advertising boards well off the court. Maybe you could sense a bit of frustration in his shots at the moment from Dan Roper, and you can understand why he's a bit frustrated with his nation trading at the moment. Nanavi will now go for it for Great Britain. Tipped to his right though by Yuto Sano. As the Japanese players on the pitch have done a grand job in keeping the Great Britain crowd quiet. They've been able to open their mouths, and there's 6! In by Sano. Slipped through the Great British net as it's gone off. Joe Roper and in. Make that now 6-1 Japan. And Sano's got a hat-trick. So in the race to be the game's top goal scorer between him and Kazuya Kaneko, Sano's 3-2 up, and it's now 7-1. Miyajiki's effort had a high bounce. It bounced right in his own half, then into the landing zone of Great Britain's. Miyajiki's got 2, and Japan now have a 7-1 lead. And there's still 9 minutes 42 seconds remaining. There's, of course, there could be the option for Faye Dale to make a change should she need it. Drinks break and a chance to sort of just give themselves a bit of a wipe off the sweat off their face. Zakora also is getting a wipe as well, just to remove some of the sort of moisture that's left on there. And the go is Dan Roper, and there is the second for GB. It's now 7-2. Miyajiki, who has been good at scoring for Japan since he came on, not so good at keeping them out. Held a big helping hand in it, going behind him and in. And Dan Roper, who scored in the first half for GB, now has a goal in the second half. As the effort with his right hand was powerful. Straight ahead of him was Miyajiki, who just, I think, goes down a bit too late, hence why it helps its way in. Players defending can usually do that. They either go down early or go down late if they can't work out where the bouncing ball is heading towards them in their direction. So, maybe a bit of encouragement, maybe not, to some. The GB players on the pitch hoping the crowd keep the faith. As we see the second for GB again. Won't be one Japan won't want to see any time, but Dan Roper might not. Mind seeing that again. Don't think he minds seeing it though if his team could claw this back. Remember, they were 3 down against Egypt in their opening game and won. Since then, they've lost to Germany, they've lost to Lithuania, and they've lost to Finland. Now trailing to Japan. Great Britain do play tomorrow as well. Of course, as the last first round set of games is completed on both court 1 and 2 as well. Taking place right now on the other court, Australia-Iran in the men's division. Great Britain men take on South Korea tomorrow. That's at 2:30. What will be their final game of this sort of first round of fixtures. GB women are also in action. They take on Greece. If you've not seen them in this tournament, I'd certainly probably predict Great Britain can win that. Played back-to-back. 2:30 tomorrow and then 3:45 tomorrow. Will be the women who will end it. And then Friday we move on to the knockout rounds. So, Miyajiki attempted to try and make it 8-2 for Japan. Roper collects, Roper strikes. Kept up well though, and then diving on it is Roper, and it's very much from me to you, the nature of the attempts towards each goal. There's Britain are trailing, remember, 7-2. Clock is now on for Nanovi to get the shot away. Miyajiki keeps it out. Did maybe look like there might have been a touch potentially going off the back of Yuta Kawashima, but didn't prove to be the case at all. Not too fruitful for Great Britain. Put in by Dan Roper, who came in from the far side into the middle with that effort, but was kept out. Olivia along the floor, just skimmed its way through and inside the Japan landing area. Tempting now to try and get an 8 for Japan. Will be Sano again. Reacting well, reacting in time was Joe Roper. Timeout called.
7 minutes and 41 seconds remaining.
7 minutes 41 seconds to go. Hey Dale, Alex Bunny and Josie Hewson on. Alex Bunny actually speaking to a specific Great Britain player right off the court on the near side. Directly in front of the GB bench. Japan's coaching staff on as well. 45 seconds you get for a timeout. You get 4 overall you're allowed to use. And they, of course, consist, all of them totaling 3 minutes. As the horn sounds. You can hear as well coming from the spectators. Court is still getting the wipers as well. One of the officials and staff is just checking to see if the eye protection for Joe Roper's okay. Remember, 6 players in each squad, both men and women's, for Goalball. 3 on the pitch at one time. Sano will now have this attempt for Japan. The first one since the Great Britain timeout. Nanovi keeping it out. Matt Loftus, Josh Murphy and David Scott on the Great Britain bench. Japan have Yoshu Nobusawa, Yuji Tagauchi and Kazuya Kaneko on there as well. Japan do have the ball in the net and it's now 8-2. Miyajiki again. Spinning effort, it took a high bounce and the pace to match as well. So, sort of 2 birds killing 1 stone there, with the power on it being excellent for Japan. And the pace as well, really pretty much killing GB, as it is now 8-2. As Miyajiki, the sub, in not even 50% of this second half played, has got a hat-trick. Kaneko's got 2. Sano 3. And now Miyajiki 3. Sano's looking for his 4th. Off the post. Away to Nanavi's side. Been a bit tricky since Sunday for GB. On course for another loss. Lost earlier today to Finland 9-3. They were losers against Lithuania in the no mercy rule, where that was a 13-3 defeat when the game stopped with 3 minutes of the second half to play. They were to lose to Germany as well. The only win they have had today is against Egypt. There does seem to be a bit of an injury here to GB. Dan Roper, I don't know if you could pick it up, but it did sound like he was screaming in a bit of pain. As Josie Hewson comes on, just to see if he's okay. Looks as though there is a problem with his left foot. As he is just sort of looking up to the ceiling in the CBS Arena. On court in Hall 1. Remember, the other court has got Australia, Iran playing. So there does seem to be an injury for Great Britain and for Dan Roper, who's the only Great Britain player to find the net in this game. Helped off and carried off by the England coaching member. Well, here's the injury that has meant Roper's going to go off. Just looks like his ankle just sort of buckled, seeing that on the replay. Not too sure if that is it or if that is the diagnosis, but Faye Dale gets the board up to show 7 out, which is going to be Dan Roper. And David Scott is going to be coming back on. Start. Dan Roper is off. They have got one more game in this tournament to play on this court tomorrow before the knockout stages of GB. That is against South Korea, who have actually really impressed me so far in this Goalball tournament. Fariba Mohammadi just sees if the eye shades and patches for David Scott are all okay. 6 minutes, 8 seconds to go. As Dan Roper is going to just get some further treatment. So that is just showing the knocks you can get from Goalball. It really is a sport as well, school of hard knocks, as well as, of course, there is little protection for the hard court. You are defending a 1.25 kilogram ball, as well as moving around on a hard surface trying to stop it at pace. But it was a injury not without saving the ball that is maybe seen problems arise for Dan Roper. Of course, players do wear sort of maybe some protection on their elbows and knees as they are moving around. Yuto Sano has a go for Japan, well defended by Joe Roper. Nanavi is who we passed it to have an attempt for Great Britain, but Miyajiki is there to stop. Not allow that to happen. Still Japan 8, Great Britain 2 here. David Scott just using his left arm across the frame of the goal as they go. Gets out well though by Koji Miyajiki. Sano coming through the middle of the goal line. That's well dealt with by Joe Roper. It goes. It will be a Great Britain ball, even though they did keep it out of the net. They will get it back as they will have the next attack. David Scott not afraid to move across the goal line. We know he can get a lot of power on his shots. It's a good stop by Yuto Sano to deny him. Went cross court. Went along the floor with his effort, with power and with pace. It's going to be a Japan substitution, Yoshu Nobusawa. With 4 minutes 50 seconds remaining, it's going to come on. Of course, if they get that sub wrong, they can, of course, be penalised and give away a penalty. Fariba Mohammadi, before the eye shades actually go on, what she does is she checks to see, this is not just her role, by the way, this is all the officials' role. They do check to see if they are okay, of course. Players play this game are either partially sighted or fully blind, so there are some players with better vision than others. So, of course, those eye shades going over the eyes is to make it fair competition. So it's the same vision for everybody that's participating on the court, rather than one being better than the other player. Nobusawa, it's on, giving the all clear, and so trying to come on and score to increase the lead for Japan. Jiki will go low and have a go. Box into the midriff of Caleb Nanavi. Great Britain number 5. David Scott coming centrally to try to put GB within 5, as they are 8-2 down. 4 minutes 21 seconds remain. Final game on this court. Penultimate game of the sort of first round of this tournament for GB men. Remember, tomorrow at 2:30 they're up against South Korea. The women face Greece right afterwards at 3:45. As it will be a Japan restart when we do get back underway. As one thing I have noticed is that Yuta Kawashima is wearing odd shoes. His left foot has got a white trainer and his right foot's got a blue trainer. Whether that is intentional or just purely by accident, only Yuta Kawashima can answer. So Nobusawa from the goal line, stepping a couple of metres forward, will have the throw. Blocked off there by Nanavi. Over now to David Scott. Power, but good stop by Yuta Kawashima. They just seem a little bit more adept, a little bit more ready in terms of reading where the ball is through Japan. It's been a real strong display by them, to be fair, in terms of keeping out England since they had these sort of blitz in the second half where they would score 4 times. Go 8-2 in front, and now it's now 9-2. Nanavi and Joe Roper unable to stop it. Nanavi couldn't grip it. Roper couldn't clear it with his feet together. So Japan have a 9th and are now 9-2 up. With that going into the back of the goal. A real disappointing tournament on home soil for Great Britain, isn't it? In the Goalball. Beat Egypt on Sunday. They played. They losing to Germany. They played yesterday, losing to Lithuania. They've lost already to Finland this morning. And now they're going to lose to Japan in their second game on this court. As there's a timeout called. Just under 3 minutes of the game left to play. I wonder what Faye Dale, Great Britain head coach, actually says. 9-2 down with under 3 minutes to play. It's pretty much gone now, this game. There is a difference of 7. If Japan were to get 3 more and the mercy rule kicks in, they don't want that to happen twice in 2 days now, do they? After Lithuania were 13-3 up when the game was stopped because of that rule. Nanavi going for it. Kept out by Yoshu Nobusawa. He left sort of on the right winger for Japan. Behind for David Scott's effort. Just past the post. It's probably the only one for Great Britain who can actually really register a great deal of power on his shots, as it did bounce in the landing area, so it will be a Japan penalty as they look to make it 10-2. Be within 2 of the mercy rule, which he'll do. Make that number 4 for Miyajiki. Calmly slotted away past the diving despair in David Scott. As Japan have just brought on Koji Miyajiki, and it's actually made things worse in this second half. Certainly showing green shoots of recovery after their loss earlier on this court to Lithuania. Well, they actually had a shorter time to prepare for this, didn't they? Great Britain, of course, started off the action at 9:30 against Finland. Japan would start their opening game against Lithuania at 12. Yes, there is a change for Great Britain. Nanovi is off. Josh Murphy's going to go on.
Is replaced by number 3, Josh Murphy.
He gets a warm round of applause. Again, Fariba Mohammadi has to check if everything is to her liking and satisfactory for Josh Murphy to come on. So check the patches and the eye shades. Shouts have come on, GP. Heard from the crowd. David Scott rolling his arm along the top of the goal. Small in height, but wide to aim for along the floor. It covers the whole court and is 1.3 metres high. So very much liken it to a very small five-a-side goal, which it is pretty much. So it is sort of just 3 goals put together, and that's 11-2 now for Japan. Well, Miyajiki again just bounces all the way through. Josh Murphy dived, Josh Murphy missed it, and he's got 5. Japan are 1 away from the mercy rule kicking in. They now lead 11-2. Got 90 seconds, Great Britain, to avoid second game from their last 3, and the second in 2 days where they don't get done by the mercy rule. Miyajiki with the throw, with power. Right-handed save by Joe Roper, keeps it out. We'll drop at Koji Miyajiki. He's got 5 of the Japan 11. May look for number 12 here in his 6th. He goes a little bit lacking with pace. Just sort of gently roll back to Great Britain, and Joe Roper has got the Union Jack sort of flag covering his arm, and this might be the clincher for Japan, where it ends this game with less than a minute to play. Miyajiki scores. It'll be 12-2. And the mercy rule will be in effect. Miyajiki has missed it. So it's wide. Can let him off with that penalty miss, given he's already bagged 5. So, by the grace and the virtue of the ball skimming past the post from Koji Miyajiki, Great Britain is still on court. And are 11-2 down as Josh Murphy has a go. Turning into it and saving it with 2 hands is Yuta Kawashima. Busawa will now have an attempt for Japan, but that's thwarted by Josh Murphy. Kept out well by Kawashima. Less than 20 seconds now remain. Miyajiki will go for it. Kept out well by Joe Roper. Will there be one last final? For Great Britain and David Scott. No, there will not. Might be for Japan, though. It will not be, so it will finish 11-2. So, the 3 games GB men and women have played today, they've ended up losing all 3. And this is the heaviest of the losses in the final game, as Japan have romped to victory, winning by 11 goals to 2. GB, of course, started the day with a 9-3 defeat. The men did against Finland. Then the women would lose 2-0 to China. Elsewhere, Japan would also lose on court earlier today, losing 10-3 to Lithuania. Canada, USA would finish 6-1 to Canada in that sort of all-North American affair. Korea would get 14, as Egypt would only reply with 5, as there was a difference of 9 in that game. Korea, by the way, are Great Britain men's next opponents tomorrow on this court, so that's probably going to be worrying for the Great Britain fans. Ukraine 0, Germany 4 in the last women's game of the day, and the final men's game of the day, and the last one overall on this court. Game 59, Japan 11, Great Britain 2. So, since beating Egypt on Sunday, they've lost to Finland, Germany, Lithuania, and now Japan. As on home soil, it's not the tournament really that GB were hoping for, but for Japan, they bounced back following their loss to Lithuania earlier on today. It is finished here on court. And Hall 1, Great Britain 2, Japan 11.